Okay, I think we're up to 48 people signed in, and it's 11:01, so we want to get started on time so that we can finish up on time. So hello and good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Melissa Mackey. I am the Director of Research here at ILS, and so we want to welcome you to our data officer training today on data reporting specifically related to the performance measures progress report, which the links went out on the 1st and those reports are due on the 30th. And as we have in past years, we thought it would be a good idea to get online and provide some additional support and background and training on the performance measures because we know it can be a little bit tricky at times. So Bethany Simpson, who is our new, though not so new anymore, Data Outreach Officer here at ILS, along with Luceli Chisenka, who is our Implementation Analyst, will be doing today's presentation. And then we also have a number of our regional attorneys here in the office also on the call. And we have, I believe I saw our counsel, Burton Phillips, is also logged in. And so the questions that the research team are unable to answer, oh, and I should also mention that Carline Cowpers is also here, one of our other performance measures guru. So any of the questions that we're not able to answer here on the research team, we are absolutely certain that our attorneys will be able to answer for you. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Luceli, who's going to get us started today.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. We are going to start off with a few questions. So next slide, please. And for some of you, our more seasoned data officers, you will probably recognize some of these questions. We ask them mostly to inform new data officers about the performance measures, but it's also a good reminder for those of you who have been with us from the beginning about some of the foundational information about the performance measures. And if you want to, if you're feeling a little bit brave, you can put some responses in the chat. And then the answers will be on the second to last slide at the end. So question number 1, the expenditures asked for in the performance measures refer to the spending of the statewide expansion of the Harrell Herring contract. We'll refer to it as a statewide contract, funds, and nothing else. Is that true or false? Thank you. I see some answers in the chat. Okay, next slide, please. Question number 2. Each provider should submit a separate performance measures progress report to ILS. Is that true or false? Okay. And last question, where can budget items approved in the statewide contract be found? A, on the ILS website, B, attachment B1 of the statewide contract, C, attachment C of the statewide contract, or D, B and C, attachment B1 and attachment C of the statewide contract. Okay, so I'm going to let you think about those answers for a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bethany for our introduction.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So as we dive into the performance measures report, it's important to note that individual links were sent out via email on April 1st. If you did not get your link, please let us know as soon as possible, and we will make sure that gets sent to you ASAP. This report is due on April 30th, and there should be one submission per provider. So the look back period for the report in April is typically 1 year, April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. However, there is one exception, being question 1 and question 3. In questions 1 and 3, we are asking about attorney hires and non-attorney hires from the statewide expansion from April 1st, 2018 to March 31st, 2024. So how many have been hired since the start of the statewide expansion? Then the rest of the quantitative questions refer to the prior fiscal year. So as we said, the reporting period for the prior fiscal year is April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. Most counties had a one-year extension of the first statewide contract through March 31st, 2024. These counties should refer to their year 5 budgets or an ILS-approved budget modification for the extension year. So any counties that have not yet gotten a second statewide contract need to look at year 5 budget with any approved budget modifications. Any counties with the second statewide contract need to look at year 1 budget. So there are 7 counties that are on their second statewide contract as of April 1st, 2023. Those are Clinton, Delaware, Dutchess, Hamilton, Lewis, Tioga, and Wyoming. If you are one of those counties, you're looking at year 1 budget. Of those 7 counties, Lewis and Tioga also had a one-year extension of the first statewide contract through March 31st, 2024. So you should be referring to both of your contracts. New York City had a one-quarter extension of the first statewide contract through June 30th, 2023, and started their second statewide contract on July 1st, 2023. I know that was a lot of information, so I'm going to stop here and ask if we have any questions so far. All right, and if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt throughout, but we will also open the floor at the end to any other questions you may have. Okay, so we need complete, accurate, and timely data. For those that were on my discussion groups, you might recognize this. Reporting accurate data is required under the terms of the statewide contract, but this information is also used in the annual report ILS sends to the Division of Budget on the status of implementation of statewide reforms. Accurate data means continued funding, and continued funding means better representation. So I'm going to pass the baton back to Lucelle as we kind of dive into the intricacies of the report.
Thank you, Bethany. So the first thing that you have to do that we recommend before you even get to the performance measures progress report is gathering all of the data that you'll need to fill out the report. The first place to look is at attachment B1, which is what you're looking at on this slide right now. Before you fill out the performance measures, we recommend that you print it out, both the PDF of the document and then also attachment B1. For the purposes of this training, we created a sample budget and input some dummy data. So none of these numbers are from any of your providers. We just did this for the purposes of this training. All budgets have the same format when you look at them. Each provider has their own section, and each section is divided into caseload relief, quality improvement, and counsel at first appearance categories. And then within each of those categories, there is personnel, contract consultant, and OTPS parts. You may have noticed in this sample budget that it goes to year 5, but as Bethany just stated, there are some counties who have a second statewide contract, and that contract is a 3-year budget. Once again, any counties with a second statewide contract, you should be looking at your year 1 budget. And any counties that have not yet gotten a second statewide contract, look at year 5 budget with any approved budget modifications. So I see we do have a question in the chat about the look back period from Ben. Does the mid-year report in October run year-to-date January to September, or likely this year, would it run April 1st, 2024 to September 30th? I want to press pause and say, don't look ahead because it's going to confuse you. Just focus on the April report. And then when it comes time for October, we'll have all of that information because I know that these dates are a lot. Okay, next slide, please. Another place to look for accurate data is in attachment C of the statewide contract, which is called the work plan. Similarly to the budget, all of the work plans in each contract have the same format. Each provider has their own section, and each section lists the details of each budget line. The budget and the work plan help you determine which positions to report on the progress report form and how to categorize those positions. Next slide, please. So now you've gathered all of your materials, you have printed out attachment B1 and attachment C, and you are ready to dive into your performance measures progress report. So we're not going to go through every single question on this training. We're just going to focus in on some of the questions that have pretty frequently given providers across the board some difficulties. And one of those questions is the very first question on the progress report, question number 1. So the first thing that we're asking you to do is please read through all of the general instructions and read through what the question is asking you for. So question number 1 is asking you to report the number of attorney positions that are funded as of March 31st, 2024 by budget expenditure items listed in the caseload relief, quality improvement, and counsel at first appearance categories of the statewide contract. So the first thing that you could do is identify all of the categories in your contract. So when you're looking at this sample budget that we have on the right here, you'll see under the public defender's office, it says caseload relief, quality improvement, and then if you go down to the bottom, counsel at first appearance. Then the next thing that you can do is identify your attorney positions. If you're looking at caseload relief, it says that there is one attorney supervisor position. And then under that first budget line, it says 2 in parentheses and assistant public defenders. That means that the total number of attorneys in the caseload relief section is 3, because that 2 in parentheses means that there are 2 assistant public defender positions. If you look at the quality improvement section, there are no attorneys listed. So then you would move on to that last category, counsel at first appearance. And you'll see that there is 1 attorney position listed under personnel, assistant public defender position. Now, be sure that you're reading through both of those budget lines. That second budget line also says assistant public defender, but it says fringe after it, so that's not an attorney position. So under counsel at first appearance, there's only 1 attorney position. So if you're answering question number 1, in total, from your budget, you would report that there are 4 attorney positions. There's the attorney supervisor under caseload relief. There are the 2 assistant public defender positions, and then there's the assistant public defender position from under counsel at first appearance. Next, it comes time to determine whether that position is a new hire, an upgrade of an existing hire, or if they are on contract. Whether the position is listed under the personnel category, contracted consultant category matters. Positions found in the personnel category will be identified as new hires or upgrades of existing hires. Positions found in the contract consultant lines will be categorized as on contract. So I'm going to use the 2 attorney positions as an example. They are in the personnel section, so they can either be categorized as new hires or as upgrades of existing hires. And I see we have a question from Ellen in the chat. Do we go by make sure that everyone is muted? Thank you. Do we go by the positions on the budget, even if there are no attorneys currently filling all of those positions? Our PD office has had several people on leave. That is a great question, Ellen. So if you have attorneys that are budgeted, but there is currently no one in the position, or you haven't been able to hire an attorney, you only report the positions that are filled. So if the position is not filled, then you would not report that as someone who is working for the public defender's office. Okay. So now you're still trying to figure out how the work plan could help you. Next slide, please. The work plan can help you in trying to determine who is categorized as a new hire or as an upgrade of an existing hire. When reading the work plan, let's say you're looking for an upgrade of an existing hire, look for increased hours. An upgrade of an existing hire means that there is a parity increase and an increase in the number of hours worked. When you look at the work plan, it says the position went from part-time to full-time and that the position increased from 20 hours to 40 hours in a week. Because this attorney position had an increase in the number of hours worked and a salary increase, you would categorize it as an upgrade of an existing hire. Be sure to read through any amendments that the contract has as well. It's important to read through all of the documents that you have so that you don't miss out on any of that kind of nuanced information that can help you identify things that you need to report. I'll note again to take note of the way that attorney positions are grouped together in the budget because we do something similar in the work plan. Some positions are grouped together as 2, 3, or even 4 attorney positions. Be sure that you're reading through your budget and your work plan carefully to not miss out on any reporting of any of those positions. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have a few more questions. And again, I'll say if you're feeling a little bit brave to put some responses in the chat. This is one of our commonly asked questions. I have an attorney position that was filled on May 20th, 2023, vacated on July 15th, 2023, then refilled on September 3rd, 2023. How do I report that position? So the way that we always say that you should look at positions for the purposes of the performance measures progress report is that you should look at positions and not people. So even though there were 2 people who filled 1 role, it's just 1 line on the budget. So you would only report that attorney position once. It'd be 1 attorney position, not 2. I see that Ellen has another question. We have an attorney that started as part-time, moved to full-time, and then back to part-time within the year. How do I report that? Ellen, did they have any change in their salary? I mean, they had a change in salary and it increased. I would ask Caroline, are you on the line? I think I'm gonna see if that would be an upgrade of an existing hire.
Right.
Yeah.
We haven't had this question before.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hear myself talk. Bethany, can you mute? Thank you. Sorry, there was some echo here because Bethany and I are in the same space here. So we haven't had this question before. Technically, if the and this is what I think, if statewide funds were used to pay for that increase from part-time to full-time, and that period fell within the reporting period, so it fell within April 1, 2023 to March 31st, 2024, then you would report that on the performance measures progress report because it's a use of statewide funds with a purpose to temporarily, in this case, upgrade a position. What I would recommend is to also in the last question, question 11, to give a little bit more clarification that this was a temporary upgrade that lasted for a certain amount of time, and then the position was moved back to part-time. I hope that answers the question, but feel free to ask any follow-up questions if you have them.
Okay. So I'm just going to clarify the answer for the question that's on the screen. If you have an attorney position that was filled, vacated, and then filled again, you would just report it as 1 position, not 2, because you are reporting on positions and not people. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I have been employed with the Public Defender's Office since December 15th, 2019. Would I still be considered a new hire? Does anybody have any idea? This person would be considered a new hire or not? Yes. Okay. Next slide, please. Ellen, you are correct. This person would still be considered a new hire. Unless a filled position has a change in status, an increase in hours, which would make the position, an increase in hours and salary, which would make the position an upgrade. For the purposes of the performance measures progress report, the position will always be categorized as a new hire. And that applies to question number 1, which is asking about attorney positions, and question number 3, which is asking about filled non-attorney positions. Next slide, please. So speaking of question number 3 is very, very similar to question number 1. The only difference is that we're asking you to report on non-attorney positions. And once again, that's filled non-attorney positions. If you have a non-attorney position that's budgeted for, but that you haven't hired for yet, then you would not report that position. Be sure to once again have attachment B1 and attachment C of the contract out while you're filling out this question, and look at the different categories to identify non-attorney positions. In this sample that you're looking at on our slide, under personnel, we have a paralegal and a secretary position. Under contract consultant, we have an investigator position. And under counsel at first appearance, there was nothing. So that means that there are a total of 3 non-attorney positions. Since the investigator is listed under contract consultant section, they would be categorized as on contract. So as you go through the performance measures, you may note that in question number 5, we ask about investigators again. So you could report investigators in either question number 3 or question number 5. Next slide, please. And reporting on investigators has always been a bit complicated because of that. Our recommendation is to first look and see where the investigator position appears in your budget. In the sample attachment B1, we counted the investigator position in question number 3 because it was listed in the budget as a contract consultant position. This means that the investigator is in-house. They are a staff position and they've been hired, contracted, to work on the cases that your office has. To report an investigator in question number 5, look to your budget and work plan to see if there might be multiple investigators listed, or if there is a mention of an hourly rate, or if they're retained on a case-by-case basis. The most likely answer for that means that the investigator or investigators are not in-house and they are retained as needed by your provider. If the investigators are being paid in the non-attorney professional services line, that also most likely means that they should be reported in question number 5. Are there any questions on that, investigators? I see we have a question in the chat, but does anybody have any question on any of what we've gone over? You can put them in the chat. I do see we have another question from Mary. I took on the position of senior typist data officer in 2022. Am I a rehire into this position or a new hire? The previous employee in this position went to a paralegal position in 2022. Is she a new hire in that position? So was that in 2022, Mary? Was that the first time that you were in the data officer role, or was there someone in the data officer role before you were in that role? Someone was in that role. Okay. And so I would say that that would be counted as one position. And Caroline, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would say that would be counted as one position. That is the rehire of the same position, like that example that we used. So although there were 2 people in the same role, it's just one budget line. So you would report that as one position. And then the previous employee in this position went to a paralegal position in 2022. Was that the first person in that role? I'm assuming they may have filled that position, so that would also be just one position. And I would say that that also would be categorized as a new hire because it's just continuing with the same budget line. So both of those, the data officer position and the paralegal position, you would report them as two positions only, and that would be, they would both be new hires. Okay. I see we have I'm going to go to the next question. From Brenda, are any questions answered differently for a county in an extension of the first contract versus a county that started their second contract as of April 1st, 2023? And I am going to share that question with my colleagues.
Hi, so I'm Jen Chanu. I'm one of the attorneys with the criminal defense representation team at ILS. And so with regards to that question is no, the answers are all like the substance of how you're going to go through and answer all the questions is the same. It's just that you're going to be looking at the second statewide contract when you're pulling out your documents and getting them together and reviewing it. But the answers are the same. One thing I will say is that for the investigators, on the new contracts, we are kind of lumping investigators in with all specialized services. So, you know, I think that this might be an area for a little bit more follow-up. I know that the CDR attorneys are going to be reviewing all of them and might have some follow-up questions. So if there is a case where you have a contract with one steady investigator that you pay like a monthly stipend for to take all of the investigations in your case, you might still be paying that out of the specialized services line, but we might want to know in question 3 that that's happening. So I think that's something that we're going to kind of have to look at everybody's, you know, contracts and everything individually to make sure that we know everything that's, you know, happening in the program. And if we have follow-up questions on that, we'll definitely reach out and ask.
Thanks, Jen. Another question from Shane regarding investigators. What if they're funded from another source but are receiving a stipend enhancement for additional duties related to HH funding? And I believe that there is a stipulation about stipends. We would not report them, but Caroline, can you clarify that for me, please? Or
This is a good question.
yeah.
Let me have a quick look at the instructions and definitions, but my gut reaction, let me see. All right. So when it comes to the investigator, that investigator in this example that Shane brings up would be reported in question 5. And so you would, the expenditures, so the dollar amount would just be the stipend that you would report in question 5, because that comes out of the statewide funds. And so yes, you would report it in question 5.
Okay. Thanks, Caroline. We have one clarification from Brenda. Everyone is still considered a new hire in the second contract as well. For the purposes of this April 2024 report, yes. If there's no changes to their status, if they're not receiving the upgrade in salary, increase in hours, if they're not a contract position, then yes, they would be considered a new hire. Any other questions? Okay. And of course, if you think of one as we're going through the rest of the training, you can always put it in the chat and we'll answer them. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Bethany.
Okay, so I know you are all wondering how this information is used. 123 providers across 52 upstate counties and New York City all complete the performance measures report twice a year, due in April and October. ILS then takes all of that data from your performance measures reports, creates one annual report, and submits it to the New York State Division of Budget in the end of May 2024. The report outlines the progress that has been made in counsel at arraignment, caseload relief, and overall quality improvement. That is why complete, accurate, and timely data is so important. So as you'll see here, this is an example of what you would see in the report that we submit. So this is pulled directly from the April 2023 performance measures round. And you can see there's a total number of staff positions, expenditures, expert investigative services that are used. And you might also note that it is displayed per county, but please note that every provider outside of the HH counties still have to submit their own report. So, counsel at arraignment. An estimated 157,460 cases had representation at arraignment with the statewide contract funding. This is an increase of 56,393 cases over last year's reported. And then between April 1st, 2018 and March 31st, 2023, 542 new attorneys were hired who provide counsel at arraignment. In addition to the numbers of new hires and upgrades, some providers include a narrative to describe the programs that have been created. A few providers describe their efforts in creating special types of arraignment programs and positions, including an arraignment program specifically focused on juvenile and adolescent individuals, a pre-arraignment program in which counsel is assigned to the case before the arraignment to ensure attorney continuity, and the creation of positions tasked with the coordination of arraignments in the county. For caseload relief, between April 1st, 2018 and March 31st, 2023, 694 new attorneys were hired with the statewide expansion. In total, an estimated 109,644 cases were represented by attorneys who were hired during that period. As the number of attorney staff increases, providers have been able to assign attorneys to specialized teams focusing on particular types of charged crimes or disciplines, assign additional attorneys to the busiest courts, and promote experienced attorneys to supervisory positions. Providers also reported that the backlog of pending cases from the COVID pandemic is starting to diminish. So additionally, between that period, 401 non-attorneys were hired, and specialized service positions continue to be an essential component of caseload relief. Providers reported that specialized service staff assist in reducing attorney caseloads by handling a variety of administrative tasks, and providers also reported that having the additional attorney and specialized service staff positions have promoted job satisfaction. For quality improvement, of those 694 attorney hires, 85 attorneys were hired that provide training and mentoring. 336 training events were hosted, sponsored, or co-sponsored, and 1,925 attorneys attended those training events that were supported by statewide contract funding. Many providers reported using statewide contract funding to meaningfully enhance access to CLE trainings, conferences, and meetings. Providers indicate that because of statewide contract funding, a wider variety of in-person and virtual training opportunities are now available to staff in their offices, including DWI trainings, basic trial skill trainings for newly hired attorneys, trainings on client-centered representation and office culture, and trainings on the representation of non-citizen clients organized in collaboration with ILS's regional immigration assistance centers. Finally, the statewide has a total of $1,735,670 that were spent on contracted expert services and $525,792 that was spent on contracted investigative services in the past year. Of expert services, 8,132 cases used expert services, which has increased from 1,355 cases in 2020, which is an increase of 500%. 9,713 cases used investigative services, which increased from 1,548 cases in 2020, with an increase of 527%. Most providers discussed how statewide contract funding has improved their ability to hire or contract with a variety of specialized service professionals, including investigators, experts, social workers, case managers, consultants, mitigation specialists, forensic psychologists and psychiatrists, interpreters, intake coordinators, community outreach coordinators, administrative support staff, and paralegals. Access to these services has a direct and positive impact on the quality of representation. So as we wrap up, we are going to, in a second, review the questions that we started with, but I wanted to once again open up to see if there was any questions on these last few slides.
So while they're going over the first part, so it looks like expert services, that's what they were just talking about. That's the part where I got confused. Because I missed.
Hi, Janice. Can you repeat your question?
And this word. Experts in it, they lump it all together, but an investigator is different. Can you hear you? I think we're just sitting there.
Hi, Janice. Can you please mute your computer or line?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I do see a question in the chat from Catherine. Q2 doesn't specify a date range. Is the date range the same as cases assigned to attorneys 4124 to 33123? Yes, it is. Okay. All right. We are going to review those questions that we asked you at the very beginning. So to compare your answers, the expenditures asked for in the performance measures refer to the spending of the statewide expansion of Harrell Herring contract funds and nothing else. That is true. Each provider should submit a separate performance measures progress report to ILS. That is also true. And then question 3, where can county budget items approved in the 5-year statewide contract be found? That was D, which was both B and C, attachment B1 and attachment C of the statewide contract. All right, so we are about to wrap up. If you have any questions later on, you can either ask me, Lucelle, Carline, anyone. You can also email the inbox, performance@ils.ny.gov. This training, along with past trainings, will be posted on the ILS website. There are other past performance measures trainings that you can review if you have further, like you're brand new, you want some extra experience, anything like that. The February 17th and April 7th, 2022 is a 2-parter. The first part goes much more in depth for the budget training, and then last year's report on April 6th. Is anybody have any questions they'd like to finish off with?
I see Damien asked a question in the chat. On question 4A, we count the number of training events. In 4B, we count, on 4B, the total number of attorneys who attended the training. So if we have 2 training events in 4A with a total of 20 attendees, do we put 20 in 4B?
I can answer this question if you want, Lucelle.
Sure.
It depends, because in 4B, you are correct, Damien. We are asking about the total number of attorneys whose attendance at training events was sponsored by the statewide contract funding. So in essence, you would put 20 in 4B, but I want to make the point that the trainings itself don't have to be sponsored if their attendance was sponsored. So if in addition you sent off a couple of attorneys to a different training that was not sponsored by the statewide contract funding, but you did use statewide contract funding to send them there for instance, for travel costs or registration costs, then you would count those as well. Okay, yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Caroline. If there are no further questions, then I will bid you adieu. Thank you all so much for joining us.
We do have one more
Oh,
question.
we have one more.
One more snuck in,
One
yep.
more. From Brenda, to follow up that answer, how would you count the same attorney that attended both the trainings?
You would count that attorney as one because you're counting the attorneys, the total number of attorneys, not the total number of attendances. So you would count an attorney as one, even though that attorney might have attended a number of trainings.
Okay. So even if one of those 20 attorneys in his question went to another training, it would not be counted.
Even if one of the 20 attorneys in his questions went to one additional training, you would already have counted that attorney. And so you would just count that attorney as one. But yes, that attorney could technically have attended 5 trainings. But since we're asking in 4B for the total number of attorneys, the unit that we're focusing on is the attorney. So yeah.
All right, Caroline, thank you so much. I don't want to jump the gun, but if we are all set, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who joined us today. I hope you have a lovely day and happy reporting.